Speaking of Captain Marvel, I wanted to talk to you about House of the Dragon. Well, according to rumors,
this is gonna be a new thing. It's gonna be a new thing of like having the worst transitions of all time.
What do you mean? I think it's the greatest transition of all time. According to rumors online, Nettles will not appear in season 2 of House of the Dragon. The Dragon Sea plot will be addressed in season 2. We'll have Alan, Adam, Ulf, and Hugh. They're confirmed, but she might have another role in season 3 or won't appear at all. Sources say. So this tracks with what a lot of people have been seeing, and adding to the meme that Daeron, Viserys and Alicent's other son, was not seen in season 1. And when Viserys says, "My entire family together at last," even though Daeron wasn't there, and now Nettles may not appear. For real quick, for the uninitiated, who is Nettles?
Nettles was so in the original Princess and the Queen, Jace gets an idea that they should find, because they need more dragons and they need more dragon riders. Jace gets this idea that they should look to the local population of Dragonstone, who are filled with a bunch of Velaryon and Targaryen bastards, because for hundreds of years the Targaryens and the Velaryons lived on Dragonstone and Driftmark, and they had something called Lord's right to the first night, meaning the Lord is able to go and have sex with the vassal's wife on their wedding night. And so from that process, they would impregnate some of these women, and some of these women would have Targaryen bastards and Velaryon bastards. And so they would, in their blood, they would have the special genes to ride dragons. And then those people would go on and live their life, and several generations would go by and whatever. The point is, the entire island, the locals are filled with Velaryon and Targaryen blood, and are able to, some at least, are able to ride dragons. And so Nettles is a little unusual in that she didn't look like she had any Targaryen blood or Velaryon blood. She was a very dark little girl, and she didn't like bond with a dragon like the others did. She claimed she was a dragon seed, but again, she doesn't look like she's a dragon seed at all. And rather than like bonding with a dragon, she brought some sheep out and fed this dragon called Sheep Stealer, waited until it got full and drowsy, and then climbed on its back and just like rode the dragon that way. And so there's a question of whether or not Nettles ever bonded with a dragon, or if she was actually just like feeding it and then riding it with no bond. And so she's a really unique, interesting character. No one, we don't know any characters who have done this, but then there's a question of whether or not that would happen eventually in A Song of Ice and Fire, with other people's, trying to get on Dany's dragons. Could a not person without special blood like ride a dragon like Nettles may have?
Nettles is also important to Daemon's story too, right?
Yes, there's a rumor that Daemon and Nettles have an affair, and it causes Rhaenyra to become incredibly jealous and delve and become mad and crazy because she thinks that Daemon is having an affair. But we don't really have any proof that they had an affair or not, so it could just be all hearsay, and it could be like, sent to Rhaenyra, told to Rhaenyra to mess her up and get her off her game, rather than be the truth.
I brought this up with resident crazy person, Dragon Demands, who is always seeming to be in the know when it comes to behind the scenes stuff. And he made a very good point about Nettles not showing up, but it not being a problem. He compared it to Shireen, how she wasn't in season 2, but was in season 3. And at the time, like, no one really cared. So, and not to mention, they are discussing about, so last time we spoke about like this whole situation, and you even did a video on how House of the Dragon story could be stretched out for 4 seasons. They're now talking about it, like some of the story being stretched out over multiple seasons. In my opinion, that sounds like more than 4, although we run the risk of it dragging on. But at the same time, we do know that HBO is pressed for time to put shit out. They're so pressed for time that not only is House of the Dragon going to premiere in summer of 2024 like we expected, but spring of 2024, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is expected to film and possibly premiere in summer of 2025. So we're going to have just like Star Wars on Disney Plus, Game of Thrones every other year now.
Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
this gets back to the story of George and George, man. George and George. well, George Lucas, like essentially everything George Lucas did, like birthing one channel, and then everything George R. R. Martin did, birthing another. The story of George and George.
We'll save that for another video that we're working on.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, so Daeron, we still don't have anything on Daeron. Is Daeron that important going forward to the story, or could we cut him out?
You could adjust the story a bit and completely cut Daeron out. Keep in mind that George R. R. Martin himself makes a lot of mistakes with Daeron, like where he is and where he isn't in The Rogue Prince and The Princess and the Queen. George himself forgets about the character. So, and like where he is. So it's not just the showrunners. Like Daeron is just this like forgettable character, I guess, because he's just and when I'm talking about that, I'm talking like in The Rogue Prince, for instance, in the original Rogue Prince, Viserys announces that he's going to have a dinner with all of his family. And it's the same as in the show where he's like, oh, my whole family is here. But Daeron's not, or at least we don't hear about Daeron being there. So it's like, did George R. R. Martin forget about Daeron? And then in the original Princess and the Queen, like George forgets that Daeron is in Old Town. And actually, Daeron is mistakenly in King's Landing, sad about his father dying, because George forgot that he was in Old Town, and that's fixed for Fire and Blood. But it's just the character, like he's close to nobody's heart. He's just this forgettable dragon rider. He exists to be another dragon. That's it. He doesn't. He has no personality. I mean, they tell us his personality, like, oh, he's very well behaved. Oh, great. That sounds fantastic. He's a very, very agreeable guy. Oh, okay.
So Daeron not being in there is completely fine, though.
It's fine. Nettles is a super interesting character. It would be a real shame if Nettles were not in the show. If they cut Daeron out of House of the Dragon, who fucking cares? Who fucking cares? I understand that like super book purists will be like, no, he needs to be there because Daeron was one of them. But it's like, nah, just cut him. Just cut him. He's not that important.